Welcome to a special World Cup edition of Legal AF. We might as well jump on the bandwagon. U.S. playing we're counter-programming the U.S. game right now. For those that are like, is the World Cup over yet? But I'm glad you're all here with us. My regular anchor on the midweek, Karen Freeman-Agnifilo, of course, with us here. So much to talk about just in the last 24 to 48 hours. Karen, everything from as we came on the air, we got a brand new lawsuit. John O. Brennan, former CIA director under Barack Obama, and apparently a target under some grand conspiracy theory of some sort of obstruction or conspiracy or something that's not time barred by statute of limitations. Well, he's not waiting around to get indicted, so he filed his own lawsuit first. And in a district court in the D.C. area, and he wants the preservation of all the documents that Donald Trump, the Department of Justice, and Kash Patel have, and don't destroy anything, because I'm going to need them for my vindictive prosecution motion in the future. But it's a very interesting complaint, Karen, because it's like a speaking complaint. It's got sections and paragraphs. It reads like a legal brief more than a complaint. Screw him to get his story out before. And I think this is the first bullet in the war, as he will obviously, this will be something that will be seen by a future judge if ever they get around to indicting him. Very interesting strategy, though. I want to get it from a prosecutor and defense lawyer standpoint of like not waiting around to see if I'm getting indicted, having watched what happened with people like John Bolton coming out and filing his own lawsuit. We'll talk about that. E. Jean Carroll had a big win, but of course, the Trump side of the case are trying to delay her getting money. Supreme Court finally ruled effectively 9-0, because nobody dissented, that they're not going to overturn the jury verdict that found Donald Trump to be a sex abuser or defamer or somebody that owes punitive damages. And the $5.7 million running with interest that she was awarded by the first jury should be paid out to her. So that was the ruling. And then a day later, as expected, Robbie Kaplan for E. Jean filed her motions with the court. And wait till you hear how Donald Trump reacted in a social media post. I'll leave you on the edge of your seat there. We've got, we're unpacking all of these Supreme Court rulings. For those that want to see a really interesting round table, that's better, panel round table discussion, I think that's where I was going, with Supreme Court sort of experts, come over to Legal AF YouTube channel and go under the live tab, and you'll find today a hour-long panel hosted by our friends Court Accountability Action with Ellie Mistal and Leah Littman and others, Mike Sachs, talking about all the cases that have come out and sort of taking a 5,000 or 10,000 foot perspective on the Supreme Court term. Really interesting stuff over on Legal AF YouTube channel. So I'll commend people to go over there. And one of the rulings that has not gotten enough attention, and I think it should, we'll talk about tonight, which is the transgender ruling. Brett Kavanaugh, writing for a 6-3 majority, once again, bashed a group of people in America who can't defend themselves, the transgender community, especially when it comes to sport. And some new revelations where how the Trump administration is going to try to make political hay and score cheap political points after losing at the Supreme Court on the on birthright citizenship. Trotting out Stephen Miller. Wow, the crazy town shit that Stephen Miller said out loud today with Jesse Waters, and Donald Trump's comments about how he's going to fix the constitutional interpretation with a statute. I don't think he's getting a proper briefing on how our system of government works and how constitutional analysis works. It can't be overcome by an act of Congress because it's in the Constitution. So we'll cover that and so much more. But I want to catch up with my old friend, Karen Freeman-Agnifilo. Karen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Popok? I think the World Cup is so exciting. It's bringing countries together. It's making me excited to watch football, I'm now calling it, just because, we're watching it. It's just such an exciting time to distraction, actually.
2002 is when I discovered the sport of football as it is known worldwide. I mean, I knew of it, but I happened to move. I was in Miami and I went to that World Cup, and I never experienced, worlds colliding and national pride until a buddy of mine, who I'm still very good friends with, a lawyer in town named Ben, not Ben myself, it's another Ben, said, "Hey, what are you doing today?" I'm like, "Oh, what are you doing?" Because we want to come watch a World Cup game with a bunch of my friends. I said, "Yeah." I said, "It's England versus Brazil." I said, "Oh, that sounds like a great game." So he says, "All right, I'll see you at 2 a.m. at the pub on South Beach." I was living in Miami at the time again. And I said, "What? 2 a.m.?" So I go to this place. It is packed to the rafters, mainly with Brits, but a couple of secret Brazilians that popped out later when Brazil won. And I got totally hooked on the energy, the enthusiasm. When the U.S. isn't doing well, I have a team that I follow. I'm like an Argentina. I know I'm gonna get a lot of grief here. I'm like an Argentina fan. I've been for a long time, but it is great. And it's also great. It's like a Trump-free zone. It's been a Trump-free zone. I haven't seen him. I don't give a shit what he says. These are athletes on a pitch who are just working their ass off for national pride and otherwise. And I don't give a shit about the president.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And, soccer, football, whatever you want to call it, is such an exciting sport. And I did a semester abroad in England many, many moons ago, and went to several of their soccer matches. And it's so exciting. And to watch sort of the best players from each country come together. It's like the Olympics, it's you put politics aside and you are there about the sport and the athletes and about what's good about every country, and not about whoever their particular leader happens to be at the time or what their politics are. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, but even this administration can't put aside its anti-ethnic, anti-racial, white supremacy, white nationalist, posturing. Mark Wayne Mullen, the current version of Kristi Noem, but wearing a pair of pants. When Iran lost, and Iran, they're not the Revolutionary Guard. Okay, they're a bunch of soccer players.
Okay? Exactly.
Right, and they've been shuttled in and out of America. In Tijuana, and really put through the mill.
Yeah. They weren't allowed to sleep in the United States.
Ridiculous. And they left a note in their locker room in California, in which they hoping somebody could find it, in which they thanked the American people. They thanked the organizers. They talked about all that's right in sport and why they do it. And somebody found it, and it was publicized. But then when they lost, Mark Wayne Mullen says out loud, "I did a little dance when the Iranians lost because now they're out of the country." I'm like, do you understand what international sport competition like the Olympics,
that's appalling,
the World Cup? It's really appalling, right?
It really is. And for those people who don't know, Tijuana is actually the border town in Mexico that borders it borders California, and they were making them stay there in Mexico because they weren't allowed to sleep in the United States when they were playing. I mean, it's so offensive and so appalling.
They shouldn't be allowed. If we're going to host like that, we shouldn't be allowed to host.
I agree.
You're not going to be with the spirit like in the Olympics. If you're going to be like, nope, we're not going to let, no. I'm going to inject politics into it, or your white nationalist, policies, you shouldn't be allowed to host.
Right. But the Iranian soccer players are no more responsible for their regime than I was going to say than we are for Donald Trump, but I don't know about that because we elected him. But they're just athletes, right? They're just people trying to play football, and it's not right.
Yeah, and the other nice little story that's come out of it about America as we reach into our national pride here for a minute, as we head into the long 3-day weekend and the 250th birthday. I remember the 200th. You do too.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. I didn't really think where I'd be 50 years later, but here I am. I was collecting a lot of bicentennial coins at the time.
I know exactly.
That was a lot of fun. But these other cities, other than the big ones that have been hosting the games, have really embraced the worldwide athletes that have come to town, whatever games that have been assigned to Greensboro, North Carolina. I mean, there's been this love affair between, right, the fans, the athletes from all these different countries, and these smaller towns that have been hosting the games. That is a beauty of America.
It's true. And where they've been practicing too. They've been practicing in fields that are some of them 100 miles away from where they're actually playing. And these are small towns with maybe a university field. And it's just these small towns are really rolling out the red carpet for these players and loving it and just loving having them there. And it's just been great.
I was coming back from, was it a business trip? I was coming back from, I was just recently coming back. Oh no, we were coming back from a trip to Montreal. I never saw the Scottish team and fans were passing through the Miami airport on the way to somewhere. I never saw so many men in kilts in one location. I mean, I've never been to Scotland, so maybe that's what it's like. But yeah, it's really a one. And I'm in Miami, and you're in New York, where there's so many different ethnic groups and so many different aspects of national pride that, you know, we just have these huge screens all over town, you know, at lunch, because the games are perfectly timed for the American audience. It's like 12, 4, 8, you know, it's like lunch, snack, beer, you know, dinner, you know, or whatever. So it's been really great. Okay. So that's the World Cup. Now let's turn to something that's you and I have been following since day one, which is E. Jean Carroll. 1996, she proved to a jury that in 1996, she was sexually abused in a dressing room at a department store you and I know well on Fifth Avenue, catty corner from Trump Tower. The women's department of Bergdorf Goodman started out as playful banter because she knew Donald Trump, ended up him using his full body weight to push her through a door in a dressing room and sexually abuse her. That's what a 9-person jury said. And then he defamed her. He's still defaming her. We'll get to that in a minute. But that's what happened. She brings the lawsuit. She brings witnesses with her. Judge Kaplan presides in federal court, Southern District of New York. And after a several-week trial, Donald Trump did not testify in the first time about him defaming her after he was president and denying that he even knew her. And the jury awarded her $5 million, now running with interest. I think it's $5.7 million. Then there's a second trial, right? Because it got tied up in appeals, about him defaming her when he was president of the United States. And that jury, after he testified and basically insulted everybody in that room with his behavior, came back with an $83.5 million judgment against him, now almost $90 million with interest. So she's been trying to, for almost 3.5 years, she's been trying to collect on these judgments. And Donald Trump's tried everything in his power. Why don't you talk about what the Supreme Court did, and then we can talk about what Robbie Kaplan on behalf of E. Jean Carroll did in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, so the Trump decided to try to appeal this decision, and he's been appealing it all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And they not a single justice voted to grant certiorari, which means they're not going to hear the case. So I guess you could call that unanimous because nobody dissented. And that essentially what they said, what that means is the case is not worthy of their consideration. It doesn't pose a constitutional question or a federal question or anything that they see that's cert worthy. And so they denied cert, and that puts finality on the case. I mean, I suppose Trump can, because he said he might consider asking them to reconsider, but that just seems so far-fetched that there wasn't even a single dissent that they would do that. But it really does put finality on this issue. And Robbie Kaplan filed a motion that basically asked the judge, also named Kaplan, not to be confused, not related, just two Kaplans. She's E. Jean Carroll's lawyer, that said essentially pay the money now. And Judge Kaplan issued an order way back when, essentially saying when all the appeals have been exhausted, including the United States Supreme Court, then the money gets released. And so she has now issued this or filed this filing, basically saying that give us our money, and a final outcome in the case entitles us to collect. And so, there should be nothing standing in the way of her getting her money. So I anticipate that the judge will issue an order releasing the money. Whether Trump can appeal that or somehow block that, who knows what he'll do, but she should get her money. I mean, it's ridiculous because I would assume she needs this money to continue fighting him since he continues to defame her. And her lawyers need to get paid too, right? This has been a long time since they've been waiting to get paid. So, so she should be getting her money soon, hopefully, and that's what you said with interest. It's like $5.7 million. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. And so Robbie Kaplan filed her motion. She said that they're not agreeing to pay, that they say they may file a motion to reconsider. This Supreme Court considered that petition 13 times in prior conferences before they rejected it. And as I only it's not even a joke, I just observed, it's a pretty sad day for Trump when he can't even get two justices who themselves were accused of sex abuse or sex harassment in their lifetimes, Kavanaugh and Thomas, to issue a dissent. So they're not going to reconsider it. It's just another delaying tactic. But it gets worse because Trump, in the last 24 hours, has defamed her again. Not only has he defamed her again and said, I don't know the woman, she's trying to shake me down, but he went so far as to say, this isn't a case about me, Karen. He said, this is a case about the United States of America. No. The United States of America didn't sexually abuse E. Jean Carroll. You did. And the fact that he would even say that. And then he raised the issue about the photo because he knows that that was a major turning point in the case when he said his big defense was for sexual abuse was I wouldn't sexually abuse her. She's not my type, which is, of course, not a defense. It's just disgusting. And then when Robbie Kaplan, during the deposition and then a trial, pulled out a photo, and I interviewed her. The sole purpose for bringing out the photo was for her to show that they had met in the past, that he didn't know her, that there was this photo, now infamous, of Trump along with his wife at the time, Ivana, meeting and laughing with E. Jean Carroll and her then husband, John Johnson. You remember John Johnson, Karen, from WABC, who was her husband. And they're laughing, ha, ha, ha. And when she brought that photo into the deposition without telling Trump that it was coming to catch him off guard and say, well, let me show you a photo. And he looked at it, and then we have the clip. We played the clip before. And he says, all right, well, I haven't seen this in a while. Let me take a look at this. All right. So that's me, Marla. Now, he has said that E. Jean Carroll is not his type. He mistook E. Jean Carroll for Marla Maples, his other wife. So Trump thought he had two wives in the photo, one being Ivana and the other Marla. It wasn't Marla, it was E. Jean Carroll. And you hear in the video clip, Alina Habba basically coaching him.
Yeah.
That's Carol. What? That's Carol. Oh, it's an unclear photo. Trust me.
It's not an unclear photo. It's crystal clear.
It's crystal clear. All right. And so
and thankfully that's on tape. That's on tape. So there's no exaggeration and there's no misinterpretation.
And they played it at trial. And he can't let it go. So in his social media post, he references a photo of me on a celebrity line doesn't count. Oh, you mean the one where you mistook her for Marla Maples? I mean, which was even a gift that Robbie Kaplan didn't even believe was going to happen. So end result, I think if Judge Kaplan by tomorrow morning doesn't order Donald Trump to respond to that filing by maybe Friday or Monday, I'd be shocked. And I think after seeing that she's continuing to be bashed instead of getting her money, what do you think, Karen? Early next week, there's an order for the clerk to turn over the $5.7 million?
I sure hope so.
I think so. And then people ask, what about the other money? What about the $90 million? So again, he's threw in another petition, which hasn't been ruled upon, to get the Supreme Court. That one has an immunity angle, kind of a double immunity angle. You know, he wants to argue that he's got federal employee immunity,
The Westfall Act.
The Westfall Act, Westfall immunity, so that the government should come out of the case, and it should be the United States of America as the defendant, as if we sexually abused her, and therefore, there'd be sovereign immunity, and she wouldn't be able to collect. Failing that, they're also arguing that the Second Circuit was wrong to rule that Alina Habba waived the argument of presidential immunity, arguing that it's almost not waivable. Now, presidential immunity is for criminal acts, not for civil acts. And so I'm not sure, Karen. What do you think, Karen? You think there's 5 votes? Like, you think Amy Coney Barrett is going to give Donald Trump criminal immunity or immunity from sexually abusing E. Jean Carroll?
I don't think that she'll go that far, no, but I do think, as you just pointed out, that this other case has this other aspect to it that the case that they denied cert does not have. And that's because he was president at the time that he made the comments, at the time that he defamed her. And so typically, if you are a federal employee and you are acting within the scope of your employment, you can't be sued for that, for things like defamation. And that's what the Westfall Act is, and Westfall immunity. And he's going to argue this was within the scope of my presidential duties to defame E. Jean Carroll and deny that I'm a rapist. So who knows, with the Supreme Court, it shouldn't even be an issue. This shouldn't rise to the level of Supreme Court worthy. This should not, in my opinion, even come close to the line. But as we've seen with the Supreme Court, when it comes to Donald Trump and expanding his authority and letting him have a lot of leeway to do a lot of really bad things, that looks like what they are trying to do. So this one does have this added argument that is different and distinguishes it from this other E. Jean Carroll case, that she better get her money because he is not stopping defaming her.
I tried to get Robbie and E. Jean on, but they respectfully declined until they're through all this litigation process, which of course I don't blame them. And I wrote back and I said, well, as soon as she gets all of her money, I'd love for you to come on and brief our audience. So hopefully that'll be happening in the very near future. You're on Legal AF, the podcast. It's Mondays. Where am I? It's Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And there's one way you can help us as we lead into our 4th of July weekend is to increase our audio downloads for the Legal AF podcast. So you may be, look at that new pop-up. You may be only watching us on YouTube, or you may only know us about us on audio. But if you're a YouTuber, come over to audio, just download or subscribe. That's enough. Gets the job done and really helps us out in many, many ways. The other ways to support what we do is to come over to Legal AF YouTube channel, where we've just crossed 1.12 million subscribers. We just had our best 48-hour period because of our listeners and their fervent support. Over 5 million views in a 48-hour period, and some tremendous content there you can't find anywhere else. So take a moment and subscribe and help us build our pro-democracy channel on Legal AF YouTube channel. Legal AF Substack, whole nother community, is also a fantastic way to support what we're doing there. We got about 10 or 12 new pieces of content there, some fantastic writing by some of our contributors and collaborators. I do a live every day, which is kind of up to the minute, up to the second. Sometimes I do it with a guest like Adam Glassfeld of All Rise News, or Dina Dahl, or Don Lemon joins occasionally, things like that. So we always have something special going on Legal AF Substack. And then the other way to support what we do is we've got sponsors. If Jordy works on, Karen, me, and Ben, we use all these items. And if you've got some disposable income, I know it's hard in this economy, and you want to support what we do, we think these products are of interest. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk about what happened at the Pentagon, transgender people under attack again, and I want to touch on birthright citizenship. All on Legal AF at the midweek. Feeling sluggish? Bloated? Not like yourself. Life bombards us with silent threats. Processed foods, artificial light, and modern stressors disrupt your gut and drain your energy and weaken your immune health. Your body isn't broken. It just needs the right inputs That's why I've been using Armra Colostrum. I've noticed less bloating, steadier energy, and overall, I just feel more like myself. Armra Colostrum is nature's original blueprint for health. Colostrum is packed with over 400 bioactive nutrients that fortify gut health, fuel fitness recovery, and strengthen immune health, supporting your best performance every day. Take back control of your health. We've worked out a special offer for my audience. Receive 30% off your first subscription order. Go to armra.com/legalaf or enter legalaf to get 30% off your first subscription order. That's armra.com/legalaf. Well, it's time for some life talk. Life insurance talk, that is. You probably have it, but do you know how much you're paying for it? And for how much are you being covered? Odds are you paid too much for too little. And did you know if you receive life insurance through your job and you're unexpectedly laid off, you could suddenly be covered for nothing? Scary to think about, but simple to get right, thanks to Select Quote, where I'm headed to sort out my life insurance policy today. Unlike other one-size-fits-all life insurance companies, Select Quote's licensed agents work for you. In as little as 15 minutes, they'll compare policies from top-rated carriers to find you the best fit for your health and your budget. And they work for you for free. Get the right life insurance for you for less and save more than 50% at selectquote.com/legalaf. Save more than 50% on term life insurance at selectquote.com/legalaf today to get started. That's selectquote.com/legalaf. Welcome back to Legal AF at the midweek. Thank you for supporting our sponsors and all that we do here on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF. So, Karen, you got Judge Friedman, third time around, second time around. He issued a new order in the last 24 hours about the attempt by Pete Hegseth and the Department of Defense to block reporters from doing their job, like Julian Barnes, the New York Times. Not letting them walk around freely and bump into people to do reporting in the Pentagon, which is the world's largest office building at 6 million square feet, and making them make appointments and be escorted around the building. And it's impacting the way it's impacting the First Amendment, the Fifth Amendment rights, the Administrative Procedures Act, and everything else. And so they brought a new lawsuit challenging specifically the escort rule, which is inhibiting their ability to do their journalistic, their job. And the judge issued his ruling. And what I found fascinating about the ruling, which is up on Legal AF Substack, is that the judge spends a fair amount of time, because he feels he has to prove retaliation as part of the preliminary injunction for the exercise of First Amendment rights. He's got to talk a lot about the bad behavior of Pete Hegseth. So he has a whole section about the reason Pete Hegseth is retaliating against the New York Times and the press, because he doesn't like what the New York Times and others did to embarrass him about his allegations of public drinking, infidelity in his marriage, complete incompetence for the job, whether he lost money at a prior couple of positions in running those organizations, and to pay them back, he's blocked the door to bar the press from doing their job. He even outlines in there what happened on the Signal app about the strikes in Yemen being revealed by the Atlantic magazine because they were included in the Signal chat. So it's a whole set of, this is the reason that Pete Hegseth has issued this policy to retaliate against the New York Times. What did you make of the new decision?
First of all, nothing like making a one-day story into a 5-day story. Trump administration and Pete Hegseth, like giving them an opportunity to rewrite in their legal filings all of the things that why Pete Hegseth is retaliating against him, because he wrote about his drunkenness and his infidelity and all that stuff, and then letting the judge then rule and put that in his decision. I mean, he's just amplifying it. Like, if I'm the reporter, I'd be like, this is great. My story keeps getting written over and over and over again. And the Trump administration just loves to do that. I mean, for people who haven't been to the Pentagon, and I happen to have been to the Pentagon, this is massive. This is it to call. It's not a building. It's like a city. And it's not like a building that you can just close the door and turn off the lights and go home. This is, as you said, it's like 6 million square feet. It's literally like walking into a public place. And it is a public place because guess who owns it? The American people, not Pete Hegseth. And there are all sorts of people who work there, not just top secret government employees. You've got all sorts of, you've got restaurants in there. You've got a barber shop in there. You've got, people are in there doing all sorts of jobs and things because people spend a lot of time there. And there are lots of people who go in there. And to have a special rule for a particular reporter or for reporters, which is what this administration has tried to do, to basically say reporters, unlike others who can go and walk around in there and who can visit at certain areas, you can't, of course, certain areas are more secure than others. But to say that you have to be escorted or to be in a certain location is really preposterous and really doesn't allow reporters to do their job and to essentially shine daylight on the things that are happening there. And what was interesting about this was a preliminary injunction that Judge Friedman issued against the Department of Defense, finding that this rule against Julian Barnes for reporting on Hegseth and all of his, whatever he does, all his shenanigans, essentially was retaliation. And it was retaliation because he didn't like what he was reporting. And the thing that was stunning to me about this ruling, this preliminary injunction ruling, was that the judge said, I am not going to apply the presumption of regularity that normally has been afforded to the government by courts, which essentially says, we're going to presume that the government is acting in good faith. And whenever there's some dispute with the government, whether it's a prosecutor in a criminal case or an agency in some other case, there's been this concept in the law known as the presumption of regularity, which presumes that the government acts in good faith unless you can show them otherwise. And here, this judge said, I am not applying the presumption of regularity to this administration because we've seen too many times that this has been violated. And essentially, I'm not giving it to you here. He's not the first judge who has found this, by the way. Many judges across the country have said the same thing, which is the government, this particular administration is not entitled to this presumption of regularity. So I thought that was yet another reminder of how much the courts no longer trust this administration because they have seen so many instances, both in court filings, but also just in how they do their business of underhandedness, not telling the truth, not being forthcoming, and also just violating people's rights. So this is kind of, I think, a big deal. It essentially is saying with a preliminary injunction, there's several factors that they have to make out. And one of them is that the plaintiff is likely to succeed on the merits when the case is ultimately done, and that they would face irreparable harm, and that there's a strong public interest. And of course, here there is a strong public interest because the New York Times has to do their job. And so I thought this was a really important decision because it underscores the importance of the First Amendment. It really reaffirms the importance of really what reporters bring to the table in terms of keeping government honest and how important that is for the American people, but also just in the rebuke of this administration and showing that this was retaliatory because Hegseth didn't like the story. So for many reasons, I thought this was a really interesting and kind of stunning preliminary injunction by Judge Friedman.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And your point about I can't give you the presumption of regularity anymore because of the history of this lawless and unconstitutional administration, I think was definitely a key point for me in that decision. Those who want to read the full decision, come over to Legal AF Substack, where we have posted it under, I think, Filings AF. So not the last we've heard. We've covered a lot of stories about the press suing the Trump administration over a violation of their First Amendment rights. I just interviewed, programming note, I just interviewed Brendan Ballou, who's with Public Integrity Project, who represented our friend and fellow independent commentator and journalist, Katie Fang, and their successful win. And there was so much insider stuff that you wouldn't be able to pick up from the docket or even from Judge Sullivan's decision that Brendan shares with our audience. You're going to find it really, really fascinating. It's up now on Legal AF YouTube channel. Again, another example of the press fighting back in courts and obtaining relief.
And that was the Jeffrey Epstein. That was the Epstein files, the Epstein Transparency Act, right? Yeah.
And now, as we're going to find out tomorrow, if they're going to comply with Judge Sullivan in Katie Fang's case, and they have to, by tomorrow, tell him that they've started translating all the foreign language documents that they just looked at and said, yeah, we don't need to translate those. Right. In an international child sex trafficking ring, you don't have to translate the foreign language documents. Okay. Documents about a torture video and about Donald Trump's accuser, who said she was 13 years old and sexually abused. They need to be provided. And a redaction log. Like, why are there 200,000 pages? 200,000 pages of redaction. What's under there? And what's the privilege or the purpose that you are redacting? None of that was provided. Those are the things they went after in the lawsuit. And they either have to rip off the redaction or they have to show cause tomorrow why they're not going to do that and why they can't do that. And so tomorrow's a big red letter day. It was very interesting, though. The reason that I was caught a little bit flat-footed when the decision came down, my phone blew up. Like, Katie, she won. Did you see Katie? I'm like, Katie won? She has an a hearing on the 30th of June, which was penciled on my calendar. Oh no, the judge heard enough that by the time that the Department of Justice missed a deadline that he had set for them to respond to a new argument that had been raised, or an argument that had been raised about Freedom of Information Act, in which, because the government kept arguing, she doesn't need the Epstein Transparency Act. She can get everything through FOIA, except they had examples that they supplied to the judge whenever somebody made a FOIA submission, the government said, oh, we're not going to comply with that. See the Epstein Transparency Act. The judge gave, upon that filing, the Department of Justice half a day, Karen, until 1 o'clock the next day to respond. Okay? They didn't respond at all. They missed the deadline. And the next day, he issued a 48-page decision.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not just a win. That's a big win.
That's a big win. And
that's huge.
He said Todd Blanche conceded by not opposing, conceded that he violated the Epstein Transparency Act.
Wow.
That's going to be great when wait for the confirmation hearing on the 15th of July, right? That's required watching on Legal AF YouTube. So I want to talk about the transgender case, and let's touch on birthright citizenship first, and save transgender for last. So you've got closer than I thought it was going to be, frankly. I thought worst case scenario, 7-2. Alito and Thomas certainly in the bag, but the rest would say, no, 14th Amendment, and the promise of the 14th Amendment is all about you're born in the United States, doesn't matter who your parents are, and you get a blue passport, effectively. And I'm like, Gorsuch is over on the no side? So Roberts writes the majority opinion, flowery language about the right to have rights, and it stretches back to the 1650s and English common law and American common law and the divine right, and it's literally an ordinance from heaven. This is how he writes it, right? All this flowery, powdered wig and quill pen language by John Roberts, the guy that's busy taking away rights of the very same people, because he talks about slavery and Black Americans in other decisions like the Voting Rights Act. Where's that Roberts then? But be that as it may, he writes it. He gets the 6 votes. He gets Amy Coney Barrett to join him, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and the rest. Then there's a fight that breaks out between Ketanji Brown Jackson, who takes on Clarence Thomas. about Black history and about Black slavery and the Dred Scott decision and what you can legitimately take out of history. And she schools Thomas the way that only Ketanji Brown Jackson can in her concurrence. So all of that happens, right? And have you seen what's happened since with the Trump administration, right, Karen?
Yeah, they're trying to get Congress to pass a law to, pass. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words because there is no law that you can pass to prevent this because it's in the Constitution. And now you
don't gloss over that. Don't gloss over that. We have a president of the United States who thinks that after the Supreme Court interprets finally, I think for the next 100 years, the meaning of the 14th Amendment in our Constitution, that Congress can pass a law to override it. That's shocking.
It is shocking.
And he believes that.
Well, it's shocking that he believes it, and it's shocking that he wants it, to be honest. I mean, it's just, the whole thing is bizarre to me. But I'm sure the other thing that's shocking is Stephen Miller is now saying that, okay, we'll just change immigration policy so that pregnant people can't travel to the United States. I mean, what are you going to do? Have pregnancy tests at the border now? I mean, that's what I'm wondering. Like, you go through TSA lines and you have to go through immigration. Are they going to make women take pregnancy? I'm serious. Like, I don't
have a joke that I'm going to have to say. They're not going to they'll have one line and two lines. Dun-dun-dun. No? Pregnancy test? No? All right.
I get it. That's very funny. That's very funny. Yeah. Definitely a joke given by someone who has a young child.
Has a 2-year-old daughter.
Yes, exactly.
So people know what we're talking about. Hold on, everybody. You get the vomit bag if you're on a plane. We're going to play Stephen Miller, trotted out by the administration on the friendly confines of the Jesse Waters show on Fox, talking about pregnant women, that in a way that a person that looks and sounds and acts like Stephen Miller should never be talking about pregnant women. Play it.
But if you have birthright citizenship, it means if a person comes here 9 months pregnant to go look around at some things, in a couple of weeks, that is the mother of a lifetime American citizen and a direct line into American cash and welfare for the rest of that child's life. Right? So you have to
Are we banning pregnant women from America? Are we banning foreign pregnant women?
Well, what I'm saying, Jesse, is that you have to now think very carefully about who you let into your country, even on a temporary basis, because the possibility, as you said, for birth tourism, right? The idea that people come here just to have babies on American soil, and that baby gets to be a citizen for life. So you have mothers that come in fully pregnant, have a baby, go home, and again, that baby gets Medicaid, and that baby gets welfare, and that baby gets cash assistance, and can send, leave the baby with, a cousin, a relative, whatever, and then just send welfare checks back home. You can support a whole family in the third world. So yes, you can't have the kinds of immigration programs other countries have when you can just have
It's so offensive on so many levels. Oh. I mean, it's just I really do think, honestly, he might be the most evil person in the entire administration.
First of all, maybe Salty can put it back up, just the snapshot of it. The B-roll that they ran alongside that story of people at the wall. This is not, first of all, birth citizenship, birth tourism are people flying in, by the way. They're not sneaking in pregnant, and it's not a problem. I just had Cody Wofsy from the ACLU as part of their immigration rights project. The percentage of actual birth tourism in this country is like infinitesimal. It's in the hundreds out of 330 million people, but they always pick out some non-issue to use to drive the policy debate, right? Cats and dogs being eaten by Haitians. Got to get rid of all the Haitians with a TPS ruling. Everybody that comes to this country is trying to have a baby here because I got news for him. Nobody wants to come to this country right now. Legal, lawful immigration is down by millions and millions of people. Tourism is down equally, people applying for H-1B visas down because nobody wants to be in the Trump America.
And, the other thing, too, is Stephen Miller, everything he said was offensive. He thinks that these are people who are going to collect welfare. These are people who are going to, get benefits. Guess what? These are also people who are going to pay taxes eventually. Like when you are
billions of dollars of taxes.
Yes, exactly. Like to be a citizen means you have to pay taxes for the rest of your life, no matter where you live. Right? I mean, it's really. He just really looks at people who come to this country, unless you're a white South African, as being someone who's not productive citizen, someone who's not worth being here, someone who's just going to collect welfare, et cetera. He's just so offensive and so out of touch. And I can't believe how awful that is to say to the millions and millions of immigrants in this country who are some of the most wonderful people in this country and the most productive people in this country. And guess what? You have a love affair with Elon Musk. He wasn't born here, and he doesn't pay taxes here either, really. So, or that's kind of a joke. I don't know what he does, but it's a really offensive claim to make about immigrants in this country. And I hope nobody takes the bait. And I hope Fox News really stops parroting this birth tourism that's not really a problem.
Absolutely. I'm glad we covered that. When we come back, we're going to talk about the transgender ruling. Probably one of the most disenfranchised, fragile groups of people in America. I don't know if it's half of a 1%, but whatever it is, it's a group that deserves protection and civil rights and civil liberties. And yet this United States Supreme Court just continues to make them non-people in America. And it's saddening and it's maddening. And we will discuss it along with some other thoughts on the Legal AF podcast. You're here at the midweek. Karen Freeman, Nick Nifolo, and Michael Popok. So many different ways to support what we do. One of them is help us here with downloads and 5-star reviews over on the audio version of this. There it is. Download is the right way to put it for Legal AF, the podcast. Come over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel, and help us continue to grow that. Great opportunity. Get us to 2 million subscribers for the long weekend. That would be extraordinary. If just 10% of the people that watch our videos became our subscribers, we'd already be in the brothers neighborhood. So let's try to make that happen. Legal AF Substack. We're doing another 10 or so pieces of content every day, including lives, posting all of our filings and orders and all of our court cases on Legal AF Substack. And then I've got a special point here to raise. I was celebrating yesterday. Karen knows about it. We launched the brand new, very spiffy, very sexy website for the Popok firm. There it is. And if you have been injured in an accident or your world's been turned upside down and you need top-notch fighters in your corner, you're going to want to come to the Popok firm and all the people I have assembled around the country in collaboration with Big Auto to take on your case. And so we have it up there. And go check out the new website. I take constructive criticism. Let me know what you think about it. I think you're going to like it. And all the videos are there too. All my Legal AF work is there, all in one place on the Popok firm website. And then we've got our pro-democracy sponsors. So we're going to take a break for them now. And here's our break. Summer is here, and one of the best upgrades I've made at home recently is installing a Tushy bidet. It took about 10 minutes to set up, attaches right to your existing toilet, and honestly, just makes you feel cleaner and more comfortable than using toilet paper alone. I also like that it modernizes the bathroom a bit. Warm water, adjustable settings, and way less wasted toilet paper. It's one of those products that feels luxurious, but is actually practical too. Stop guessing you're clean. Start feeling it. For a limited time, our listeners get 10% off their first bidet order when you use code LEGALAF at checkout. That's 10% off your first bidet order at hellotushy.com with promo code LEGALAF. One more time, our listeners get 10% off their first bidet order when you use code LEGALAF at checkout. That's 10% off your first bidet order at, wait for it, hellotushy.com with promo code LEGALAF. If you love your cat the way I do, you'll spend hundreds of dollars on towers and toys and cute little outfits. But a lot of us are still feeding our cat ultra-processed food with mystery ingredients in it. That's why I love Smalls. Smalls makes fresh protein-packed cat food using preservative-free, human-grade ingredients you'd actually recognize, and they deliver it right to your door. And honestly, the difference is real. Better energy, shinier coats, fewer hairballs, and yes, way less disgusting litter box situations, because cats are supposed to eat real protein, not a bunch of fillers and junk. Plus, Forbes ranks Smalls the best overall cat food, and after switching to Smalls, 88% of cat owners reported overall health improvements for their cat. So stop serving your little carnivore a bowl of processed shortcuts. For a limited time, because you're a Legal AF listener, get 60% off your first order plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to smalls.com/legalaf. That's 60% off your first order plus free shipping and free treats for life when you head to smalls.com/legalaf. Welcome back to Legal AF at the midweek. Karen, I wanted to talk about the transgender ruling penned by Judge Kavanaugh. 6-3, really heartless and heartbreaking. You especially have been doing a lot of reporting from the very beginning about the transgender community, whether it's the cases about their use of what bathroom that they want to use, how they're identified on a passport, what rights they have in the workplace. And, you know, in one of the, as we led off our podcast tonight talking about the World Cup, one of the nice things about being a human being is to be able to have interaction with other human beings in sport. And people that have changed their sexual identity, usually either surgically or medically or pharmaceutically or whatever it is, and identify a different way than their birth sex, they still want to play sport. You know, whether you're a 12-year-old girl that wants to play soccer or play track and field, whatever it is, you don't want to be excluded from that. And there are no transgender leagues. It's not like, well, you're a transgender man, you play against other transgender men. And many of these people took puberty blockers and different things that make them virtually identical, if you want, in terms of things, to biological people of the same sex. And yet the Supreme Court just found another way to deprive them of some of the joys of being and dignity of being a human being.
Yeah, this was really a not surprising but extremely disappointing ruling about two different state laws, one in West Virginia, one in Idaho, two different cases that they heard at the same time and ruled together. And essentially what the ruling said was that Title IX, which is the congressionally passed statute that allows for or creates women's sports rights and leagues and teams, et cetera, girls and women. And the Equal Protection Clause doesn't require, neither of those require that trans athletes be allowed to play on girls' teams. And so that's the bottom line ruling. And the cases were slightly different because one of the plaintiffs did have puberty blockers and hormone blockers, and therefore their body had not gone through the male hormone, the things that typically give male athletes the reasoning behind this, which is that they are faster, according to Judge Kavanaugh, and bigger and taller and stronger and all those things. And so the ruling was disappointing. Justice Sotomayor, along with Justice Kagan and Ketanji Brown Jackson, wrote a dissent that says, the majority extends great sympathy to those it favors, the young cisgender girls and women who play sports. I share that sympathy, but playing sports can lead to benefits that are immeasurable, and many are understandably invested in ensuring that competition stays fair and safe. Because the majority, however, inflicts a hardship on those it disfavors without giving them the fair and full opportunity the Constitution requires to litigate their contentions, we dissent. So it was pretty powerful language. And the reasoning is neither here nor there. But they basically say this is more of a policy debate. It's not a constitutional protection, that this can be legislated. This is something that the Constitution does not require that they be allowed to play on girls' teams. But if through policy and legislation, states and local governments or the federal government wants to pass laws, that's how you do it, not through the Constitution. And that's where it kind of, the bottom line of where these decisions fall. And it's just so disappointing for as you said, the small number of, but really important young girls who are trans girls who want to play in sports and really, they want to play not on a boys' team, not because they're trying to find an unfair advantage, it's because they're girls and that's who they are. And so they want to be with girls. And it's just really upsetting and frustrating. And, I asked my two daughters, who I have 29-year-old identical twin daughters. And I asked them their opinion about this because, obviously they're girls and, they've played sports. And I asked them what they thought. And they said that, first of all, they were absolutely appalled by the decision. And they said, it doesn't make any sense because their sport has always been competitive horseback riding. And they said, we've always had to compete against men or boys. And sometimes they won and sometimes they were better than us. But you know what my response was? I went and I trained harder and I worked harder and I got better and then I beat them. It was just an interesting perspective when you don't have these sort of divisions and you compete, against boys. To them, they just thought, this just doesn't make any sense that you would worry about that. And then they said stuff like, there's all kinds of biological advantages in sports. Look at basketball. Look at Wemby. He's 7 foot whatever, and he has an advantage, and no one's preventing him from playing with the other basketball players. That this is so specifically discriminatory against trans people because they told me about Michael Phelps, who apparently, I didn't know this, has some biological issue that prevents him from having lactic acid buildup, and he has more lung capacity, all this stuff that they knew about athletes that have these physical competitive advantages. And of course, they mentioned Secretariat, which was the horse that still holds the all-time record for, the race that Secretariat ran, because Secretariat had a bigger heart. And, sometimes there are biological advantages, but the only thing that this decision does is it doesn't account for biological differences that many people have in the same sport. This is all about discriminating against trans people. Period. Full stop. There's no, because if you really wanted to make things fair about physical abilities and size, you would have weight classes like you do in boxing, for example, and that's how you would do it. You would make it fair. You wouldn't just make it based on something like, your gender that you identify as or what you were born as. And so I thought it was a really interesting, helpful perspective that really shows how this is so completely targeted and discriminatory against trans people. And again, not a surprising ruling for the Supreme Court, and an extremely disappointing one nonetheless.
Absolutely. Is that all it takes to win the Kentucky Derby? A big heart, you'd win the Kentucky Derby.
Well, it's not just that Secretariat won. It's that won by so many, it's anyway.
He was an outlier.
He was an outlier because he had because of this heart.
See, another thing you and I have in common, besides the bicentennial that we celebrated as children, you and I remember Secretariat in 1973, right? Winning all the. I do. I was a big Secretariat. I mean, as a kid.
Of course.
And I grew up in a horse racing town. Like I grew up in. People know I grew up on the Jersey Shore. So, and my my grandfather in the family was a notorious horse guy. He always had the daily race. He always had the daily racing form in the back pocket. And to his credit, he never took me had a good relation with my grandfather. He never took me to the track, but he often went to the track. He always thought he had a system. He didn't really have a system. He lost a lot. That's all I really know. But I grew up near Monmouth Park, which is on the Jersey Shore. It's still there. Great track. And there was Freehold Raceway that had remember harness racing?
Yeah.
It's like the all sports edition of Legal AF. Harness racing, the sitting little thing, the trotters. So this was all, and then we
trotters and pacers. They still have that in Yonkers too, in New York. Yeah.
And there's a town near me that Bruce Springsteen lives in called Colts Neck. A lot of horse farms and it's a horsey area. So I grew up, I liked horses. And so when I was a kid, I was like 7 or 8 when Secretariat was in his prime. And so I fell in love with that whole. I know there's issues on horse racing, but I was a child.
Yes, no. My daughters have strong opinions about horse racing as well.
Yeah,
not necessarily
positive.
Not necessarily a positive, but
right.
So, but no, they love horses. They've been riding horses since they were 2 years old, so they just love it.
Fantastic. And let's take a moment here at the end to talk about. What's coming up, which is a long weekend, yes, with full programming, by the way, on Legal AF YouTube channel and Midas. There is celebration. And just because Trump is in the White House and has tried to hijack our patriotism and create Freedom 250 out of what should have been America 250, doesn't mean that we shouldn't, with our family and our friends, we practice our own brand of patriotism. We are patriots. I proudly fly the flag on holidays. It hasn't been captured for me by MAGA or whatever's left of MAGA. And we're going to be doing some counter programming on Legal AF. We got some great things lined up for the 4th of July during the day. So if you're bored, you want to go look at some new videos, we have a new contributing group I think I'm going to get on the 4th of July. But, there's lots of ways to counter programming anything you see with Donald Trump. Long weekends are great to do things like going on vote.org and making sure you're registered to vote. If you think you are, you probably aren't in your state, especially if it's a red state or a purpley state because of all the changes to the law. So register to vote. If you haven't already, get behind something that's civically or politically involved. A candidate that's running for something, even local, that you find appealing, volunteer. Join up with the party of your choice. Democratic Party, local Democratic Party, whatever it's going to be, whatever floats your boat, right? If you're an independent and you don't really align with a party per se, you can kind of sign up with organizations that align with your values and your morals in terms of their policies position. Maybe it's women's rights, maybe it's immigration rights. Maybe it's elderly rights, children's rights, whatever it is, ethnic rights, black, brown. Find the group and volunteer. Trust me, you will not be turned away. They need your help. They may need your money also, but they definitely need your help and they need your hands. And this is great. If you can come off this long weekend, having, come on July 6th, signed up, ready to go. You got your mail-in ballot and your voting registration squared away. And you've volunteered your time for one of these organizations, I assure you, good things are going to come out the other side with the midterms. Karen, what are you and your family going to do? And what do you think people should do as counter programming for the 4th of July?
I think at a minimum, turn off Donald Trump. Try to just ignore everything that he's doing and saying, and really just get a break from him. That's certainly one of the things I'm going to be doing, because so much he makes so much news because he does so many things that are shocking. I'm worried he's going to bomb Iran because he's threatening to again, and take away the 4th of July from all of us and turn the news back onto him. But that's what I want. I want to break from him. I want to enjoy my family, and I want to remember the things that I love about this country and the freedoms that we still have in this country, and then rest up so that we can the fight can continue. And I'm going to keep fighting, and we all should keep fighting. The midterms are right around the corner, and we have to take back the Congress. So that's what I think. Recharge your batteries and keep fighting.
And help us here on the Legal AF community. Be a great thing just to hit that button, become a free subscriber on the Midas Touch Network, on Legal AF YouTube channel. There you go, and help us cross that 2 million threshold, and Legal AF Substack and all those different ways. So I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Got some great things. We've been counter programming the whole night against the World Cup. I haven't want to spoiled it for people that are recording it, so we haven't been talking about the score. But I really do appreciate each and every one of you here, and it's very heartwarming, the generosity that our audience shows of their time, of their spirit in supporting all that we do. So, programming note, we even though it's July 4th, Ben and I will be there for Legal AF on Saturday. And then, of course, we've got 8 to 10 videos every day on Legal AF YouTube. I think you'll find really, really appealing. So until our next recording with Karen and me and Legal AF and Midas, shout out to the Midas Mighty and the Legal AFers.